An explanation that you often hear for why millennials and zoomers have significantly less money than generations before them isn't things like wage stagnation, a rapidly increasing cost of living, degree inflation, or anything like that. Rather, they're just simply buying too many frivolous things. You know, if only you'd skip the avocado toast, you could buy a house. A meme about this that you see sometimes is the clothes comparison of broke dudes versus rich dudes, with the rich dude being a lot more thrifty. And then you got Romanian Shrek, who's saving even more money. Probably the greatest real-life example of this that people point to is Mark Zuckerberg. That is, example of rich guy, not Romanian Shrek. See, Zook doesn't need any fancy hypebeast clothes for smoking meats and shooting goats with laser guns. He's usually fine with just some plain gray t-shirts. You can go to Caldor and get a pack of 3 for like $10, right? Mark Zuckerberg's plain gray t-shirts cost hundreds of dollars. And there's actually a surprising amount of lore behind them. So for this video, let's take a look at Mark Zuckerberg's t-shirts. For a little over a year now, I've been working with my friends at Lockhart's Pomade to bring you my very own mustache wax. And after going through a few iterations to get it just right, it's finally here. It was really important to me to get the hold just right, because it seems like a lot of times if a mustache wax I'm using is strong enough to keep it in place, it winds up being really hard to manipulate and you gotta really work it into your fingers, you wind up with clumps. You gotta rinse it a bunch of times and get it just right. And on the flip side, it seems like mustache waxes that are really easy to use tend to not have the best hold. And I think we've got the best of both worlds here. I usually put this in my mustache right after a shower, or wet it a little and put it in before I go out. I get the mustache just how I want, no problem. And the hold is strong enough that half the time if I fall asleep with it in, I wake up and it's still in place without that crispy look that I hate. And at the same time, it's a water-based formula that washes out super easily. The fragrance is Lockhart's custom scent called 1 Billion, which was inspired by Paco Rabanne's 1 Million fragrance. It's a really nice fragrance, but at the same time, it's not in there super heavily, because it's right under your nose, it's nice to get a little whiff, but you don't want to overpower you all day long. And if you don't have a mustache, we also have shirts and sweatshirts with the label artwork. It's available now at Lockhart'sAuthentic.com, or you can just click the link in the description. And don't forget to use code WANG for 15% off. The focus on Mark Zuckerberg's wardrobe really began shortly after the release of 2010's movie The Social Network. It's a film about the creation of Facebook through the lens of several real-life lawsuits. Zuckerberg actually had nothing to do with this movie, so he went on a press tour to dispel things that he thought were inaccurate. That being said, he did feel it necessary to give credit where credit was due. Specifically, the wardrobe department for this movie killed it. Every single article of clothing that was shown in this movie was one he actually owned. That included the scene where he showed up to a meeting in pajamas and fuck you flip-flops. This attention to detail was very important as the filmmakers felt that he had inadvertently become a fashion icon. Jacqueline West, their costume designer, would state, "It looks like he doesn't care at all what he wears. But in a funny way, he's created a fashion. It's the new banker." He represented a trend in the faces of Silicon Valley, that disregard for style is the new status symbol. Unfortunately for Mark though, GQ wasn't convinced, placing Mark at the top of their 2011 list of the worst dressed men in Silicon Valley. Oblivious to the fact that jeans and ties come in skinny sizes, or that suits exist, the father of Facebook, and we do mean a father, loves to recycle the fresh from stats class look. Zook's style is so poor, it even inspired a mock fashion line, Mark by Mark Zuckerberg, which thankfully doesn't sell any actual clothing. Their complaints fell on deaf ears though, and Mark Zuckerberg did nothing other than double down. In fact, his style arguably got even worse. He began to wear the same exact gray tee at every public event. At first, people pointed this out as a joke, but Zuckerberg would confirm that this was all actually intentional. He revealed he had a single drawer for clothes with 20 identical shirts, living like a real-life Doug Funny. And people were shocked by this given that the CEO is worth over $9 billion at the time. Why was it that Mark Zuckerberg chose to get rid of any and all variety in his fashion? Some speculated it was an attempt to mimic Steve Jobs, who similarly kept a consistent outfit. His uniform of a black turtleneck, Levi's jeans, and New Balance sneakers became iconic, and it helped him establish a brand identity. But the public wouldn't get a definitive answer until the fall of 2014. That November, Zuck held his first ever public Q&A session, and of course, someone had to ask him about his wardrobe. To which, Mark had a surprisingly elaborate response.
I really want to clear my life to make it so that I have to make as few decisions as possible about anything except how to best serve this community. I'm in this really lucky position where I get to wake up every day and help serve more than 1 billion people, right? And I feel like I'm not doing my job if I spend any of my energy on things that are silly or frivolous about my life, so that way I can dedicate all of my energy towards just building the best products and services and helping us reach our goal and achieve this mission of helping to connect everyone in the world and giving them the ability to stay connected with the people that they love and care about.
People were quick to point out that this in and of itself was a fashion choice. It'd have taken less effort to just wear the clothes he had before. But others appreciated his approach to simplicity as it was backed by science.
There's actually a bunch of psychology theory that even making small decisions around what you wear or what you eat for breakfast or things like that, they kind of make you tired.
It all comes down to something called decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is the idea that your ability to make choices becomes worse as the day goes on. Even if you're not consciously tired, making decision after decision has a biological price. It's a sentiment that was also pointed out by President Obama, who usually only wore the same colored suits. Except, that one time. He would state, you need to focus on your decision-making energy. You need to routinize yourself. You can't be going through the day distracted by trivia. So people accepted this as both a financial and a strategic decision. For April Fool's 2016, H&M launched their Mark Zuckerberg collection. It's nothing more than 7 pairs of their basic gray tees and a single pair of jeans. It's a testament to the often held belief that the most rich live frugally. But that perception changed when Mark Zuckerberg posted a picture of his actual closet. The photo itself was inoffensive, with a caption about not knowing what to wear, and it went viral as people not privy to this habit reacted for the first time. But GQ would make the observation that these weren't just any old gray t-shirts. With a closer view of his outfit, they could better discern its make and quality. Look closely and you'll see that Zook's hoodies and tees look a lot more cashmere than fleece, like those from J. Crew, Elder Statesman, and Bruno Cucinelli. That's right. Maybe this champion of everyman style is actually walking around in $900 tees and $2,000 hoodies. And they were right. In actuality, the CEO's attire had been custom ordered from Bruno Cucinelli. The designer's publicly sold lookalike cost a minimum of $295. That meant that Mark Zuckerberg spent over $4,000 on the clothes in that photo alone. Imagine spending that kind of money and it's not even Rick. So yeah, Mark Zuckerberg isn't doing the kind of frugal penny pitching that your disappointed parents think he is. It's a wardrobe that's out of the reach of most normal people. But fret not, fans of his aesthetic. There was still hope to mimic his style. In 2017, a site called ZuckerbergShirt.com was launched to sell replicas of his tees. It was started by Vresh Clothing, a company based out of Europe. They studied his shirts to make them as close to the original as possible. Not only are they spot on, but they're priced way more affordably at just 40 euros, which is about 46 bucks. Likely to assure good faith, they would clarify in interviews that all profit went to the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. That is, Facebook's philanthropic company that occasionally invests in startups. Now, it may seem kind of goofy that I just spent so long talking about Mark Zuckerberg's t-shirts, and it kinda is. But really, understanding this is the key to understanding so much of what he does. This was his attempt at establishing a personal brand identity. And that means that anytime he would divert from this casual wardrobe, he was attempting to make an explicit statement. In 2009, Zuckerberg wore a tie every day to show he was serious about growing in the face of the recession. And a similar sentiment was echoed when he was forced to testify in front of Congress. In 2018, Zook was called into Washington following the Cambridge Analytica scandal. It was a political consulting firm that harvested data from over 87 million Facebook users. He was pressed for hours on Facebook's mishandling of information. An interrogation has become infamous for his remarkably uncomfortable demeanor. With that said, Mark was dressed uncharacteristically formal, wearing what the New York Times called his "I'm sorry" suit. It was a relief to lawmakers, though, who were worried he was going to show up in his "fuck you" flip-flops like in the movie. The day prior, Trump's former chief economic advisor remarked, "Is he going to wear a suit and tie and clean white shirt? That's my biggest question. Is he going to behave like an adult? As a major corporate leader? Or give me this phony baloney, what is it, hoodies and dungarees?" Wearing a suit was so uncommon for him that Obama had even bragged about being the guy who got Mark to wear a jacket and tie. You can probably count the amount of times he has on your hands. Now, there's another important component to the Mark Zuckerberg t-shirt lore that we've ignored thus far. That being the designer himself, Bruno Cucinelli. While Zuckerberg was his first major customer from Silicon Valley, he was far from his last. In fact, he came to be universally loved throughout the scene. In 2019, a group of tech leaders went to visit his hometown in Italy. That included Jeff Bezos, LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, and Dropbox co-founder Drew Houston. By that point, his company was earning $500 million a year, which he used for what he called humanistic capitalism. Bruno lived in Solomeo, a remote village located between Florence and Rome. Many describe it as idyllic and picturesque, a stark contrast to where his clients resided. While there's a lot of villages like this throughout Italy, it was a dying breed. Be it for urbanization, poverty, or the young leaving, these places had effectively become ghost towns. In a 2016 census, it had been reported that nearly 2,500 rural Italian villages had been abandoned. Because of this, Bruno had decided to use his fortune to prevent that from happening to Solomeo. He tore down the old warehouse that cluttered the valley, and grew trees there instead. He built a 240-seat theater in the heart of the village to encourage arts. He refurbished the town's church and its 14th century castle. The latter was then turned into a school to preserve the traditions and crafts of the village. And those are only some of the changes he's made to restore the village's former glory. Bruno was able to change the lives of nearly everyone around him. And that was, at least in part, due to Mark Zuckerberg's fixation on wearing the same t-shirt every day. In 2018, Mark Zuckerberg showed off his first new outfit in over 10 years. He wore a navy blue crewneck sweater at the year's conference. While there's no clear reason behind this change, he's since stayed consistent with this new item. And I can't say for sure that the following had any impact on his shift from gray t-shirts, but it's worth mentioning as a possibility. You see, in 2020, Stephen Levy published his book, Facebook: The Inside Story. It gives insight to the inner workings of the company from hundreds of interviews both inside and outside Facebook, and that included his obsession with gray t-shirts. The book claims that Zuckerberg is obsessed with his public image, which, you know, there's definitely been so many incidents then that just left him completely molding. But there is one particular incident that changed everything. An onstage interview in 2010. While talking with a tech journalist about the company's privacy policies, he began sweating profusely. The sheer amount of moisture dripping from his face was insane. He was like one of those horrifying ultra-detailed panels from Ren and Stimpy or SpongeBob. And at that point, that was probably the biggest incident that had happened, with just massive amounts of people mocking his appearance. Reportedly, this led him to freak out because, as the post puts it, he wants to look cool and dry instead of sweaty and nervous. After this, Mark begins having assistants make sure that his famed gray t-shirts are immaculate backstage. And more bizarrely, he instructed employees to blow dry his sweaty armpits before major events. It's a little stinker. When reached for comment, a Facebook spokesperson told Business Insider, "I doubt this is true, and if so, it would have been at our communications team's request. But surely anyone who has ever worn a gray t-shirt can relate." So she basically said, it's probably not true, but if it was, wouldn't that make sense? I'm just saying, if he's worried about sweating through his clothes, maybe a darker color is the move. Ever since then, Mark has rarely been seen in his iconic gray tee. But perhaps his new outfit was related to the company's changes in priorities toward VR. The closest we come to him addressing fashion again would be in the context of the metaverse. Last summer, they hosted a virtual fashion show to promote digital versions of high-end designer clothing. Yeah, the guy who wears the same clothes every single day wants you to spend your money buying a ton of fake clothes for your avatar. There, Zook's character can be seen wearing designs from Balenciaga, Prada, and Thom Browne. And one image includes this little schoolboy outfit that just completely horrifying. This outfit should come with a sailor hat and an oversized lollipop. But all that just goes back to the fact that Mark Zuckerberg has no time for such trivial earthly decisions. But anyway, that's the legend of Mark Zuckerberg's t-shirt. If you like this video, check out my video about suspicious coordinates found in a Facebook thrifting group. I'm out.